I have been accused by some in this room of living in the 19th century and looking back on American history before I make any decisions. And I'm going to plead guilty to that for a second here and say that in the history of presidential campaigns and then later the administrations of a victorious candidate, there has never been a candidate or a president who put veterans front and center, first of the campaign and then of the administration, until you did. I'm going to speak for Mrs. Pence, and I'm going to speak for myself as the son of a grievously wounded combat soldier from Vietnam, and in Mrs. Pence's case, the mother of a Marine warrior. These are issues that we live with every day. And for the President of the United States to say it is about time that those who have carried the burden of freedom on their shoulders are put front and center in the national conscience, that is an enormous first step for this nation and long overdue.
Thank you, Ron.
I've thanked Mrs. Pence. I want to thank two other people. First is our executive director, Barbara Van Dalen, who took this burden on herself, but took it joyfully, and is not only opening the aperture when it comes to a discussion of this last tragic act in a veteran's life, but also opening the aperture on a discussion, finally having a discussion on mental health and addiction. So Barbara, I thank you very much for what you do. And last but not least, I want to thank our Deputy Secretary, Colonel Pamela Powers, who took this on when she was Chief of Staff and has carried it across the finish line. I thank you very much, ma'am. Mr. President, I'll go back to that history. In the 1890s, one of your predecessors, whose portrait hangs in the Green Room, was alarmed at the reports he was receiving from the Frontier Army of countless deaths amongst officers and men on the far outposts of the American West. He was the first president to begin taking a look at those sad numbers, and it has taken these 130 plus years for another president to finally say, enough is enough. On any given day, 20 American warriors take their own lives. Those are active duty, guardsmen, reservists. The largest part of that number is from my father's generation in Vietnam. But another reason why this task force is so important is that it will point the way for the rest of the country. Growing up as a youngster at Fort Bragg, the leading cause of death amongst my classmates in junior high and high school was automobile accidents. Today, it is suicide. It is a scourge that is impacting every segment of this country. So I want to thank the President for having the vision to identify the real solution to this national problem, and that is us, each one of us. Each one of us can help end the stigma that has prevented America from taking on the important issue of mental health. Each one of us can work to change the culture that made it acceptable to ignore the signs of mental health and distress. Each one of us can learn to identify the signs amongst our friends, our neighbors, and our coworkers. So this day is the beginning of one of the most important national discussions America has seen. It is an effort to find a solution to a problem that does not discriminate amongst its victims: the poor, the rich, people of all races and creeds. So I'm going to end with a story that I've told before, and it was one that I was very familiar with growing up at Fort Bragg. The looming presence in the home of the airborne was Matthew Ridgway. In fact, he was so powerful that even the minor league baseball team's mascot is named after him in Fayetteville. General Ridgway commanded the All-American Division to victory in North Africa and Sicily, and then General Eisenhower tasked him with leading the airborne assault on Hitler's Fortress Europe on the night of D-Day. General Ridgway planned the operations for the All-Americans, the Screaming Eagles, and the Red Devils of the British 1st Airborne. But on the night of the invasion, he couldn't sleep. He fell out of his cot. And he reached for sustenance in the Old Testament, and he looked to the book of Joshua and God's promise to Joshua on the eve of the great battle of Jericho. And the Lord promised the general, "I will not fail nor forsake thee." Mr. President, that is what you have sent to the American people today and to the 20 million Americans who are in uniform and who have left uniform, that we will not fail nor forsake the people of the United States who have always carried, without question, our freedom on their shoulders. So, Mr. President, I thank you very, very much.